Good evening and welcome to the December 7th, 2020 reorganization meeting. Immediate following this reorganization meeting, there will be a special meeting of the board. Public comment regarding items on that agenda will be taken via the chat feature during that meeting. So for tonight's meeting, we will only be taking public comment on the election of the board or the board elections. Reading of the call of the meeting. Pursuant to provisions of sections 402 and 404 of the school code, a notification of tonight's meeting was mailed on November 17, 2020 to school board members. Nominations are now in order for the office of temporary president. Do I have a nomination for the temporary president?
Lori, you're on mute. Laura.
I would like to nominate Ben Driscoll as temporary president.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
And is there a second?
I second.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Oh, sorry, all in favor of electing Ben Driscoll for temporary president?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, all in favor, motion passes. You can take over, Mr. Driscoll. Oh, wait, I'm going to do public comment, sorry. If anyone would like to give public comment on the reorganization meeting agenda only, that's the election of the board leadership, please do so now. We're going to put the timer up for 2 minutes and I will open the chat feature for that amount of time. You need to put your name and where you reside within the district in order for your comment to be shared at this time. Okay, we do not have any comment at this time that was regarding the reorganization meeting and the board leadership elections. So Mr. Driscoll, you can take over.
Thank you, Ms. LaPera. So next on the agenda is the election of board president. So I'd like to open the floor. Are there any nominations now in order for the office of board president?
Yes, I would like to enthusiastically nominate Ms. Lucy Klein for board president. She's been a fantastic vice president, and I'm sure she'll be an even better president.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Are there any other nominations for board president tonight? Hearing nothing, I'll now ask, is there a motion to close nominations? I have a motion.
I motion to close the nomination.
Great. Thank you, Deborah. Do I have a second to close nominations?
Second.
Thank you, Shana. Now I'll take the vote. All in favor of Ms. Klein being board president, please say aye.
No.
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? I'm sorry, all in favor of closing nominations. I'm sorry, I skipped over a line. So we close nominations. All in favor of Ms. Klein being president, all please say aye.
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 Any opposed to Ms. Klein being president? Seeing none, Lucy Klein, congratulations, you're board president.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you to all of my colleagues for this honor to move ahead for the next year as the board president. Next on the agenda is the election of vice president. So nominations are now in order for the office of vice president.
I'd like to nominate Melissa Gilbert for vice president.
Are there any other nominations? Is there a motion to close nominations?
Yes, I motion to close.
Is there a second?
Yes, I second. Oops.
All in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Congratulations, Dr. Gilbert, as the new Vice President of the school board. So there's now, the motion is resolved that the Board of School Directors authorize the filing of signature cards for the newly elected officers of the board with the depositories of the school district, and further, that the board authorize the use of facsimile signatures for the newly elected president and vice president and the filing of these signatures where required. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Great, thank you.
Lucy, I'm sorry, 1 second. Before you continue, could we just close out the office for vice president by you just asking all in favor of Dr. Gilbert for
Oh,
vice
I'm
president?
sorry.
That's
Yes,
quite
I'm
all right.
sorry.
Thank you.
Are all in favor for Dr. Melissa Gilbert as vice president?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Okay. So all in motion, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, thank you. So the reorganization part of this meeting is now adjourned, and we will move on to the special meeting of the board. Okay, so we will officially start the special meeting of the board. Welcome to the December 7th, 2020 special meeting of the board. As mentioned previously, an opportunity will be given during audience recognition for public comment regarding the proposed health and safety plan via the chat feature, and as well as the update on the return to school. These comments will be read by the district solicitor, Ms. Brooks. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Copeland for his superintendent's update.
Thank you, Ms. Klein, and congratulations to you, Ms. Gilbert, and the board as a whole. Nice to see you all back. Before I introduce the athletic directors and principals to discuss the update on the athletic plan, let me just talk a little bit about our return to hybrid after we had about a 2-week remote learning around the Thanksgiving holidays. When first, let me just state for the record, when we sit around, we've got a health and safety committee of the administration. One of the things that's at the forefront of everything we think and do is the health and safety of our students and our staff. I take that very seriously. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can, recognizing that during a pandemic, anytime we leave our homes, there's a level of risk. Having said that, we've gone to some great lengths in terms of our mitigation. We've hired a separate company to come out to the schools and do cleaning. We've upgraded our ventilation system. We've taken a look at a variety of different methods to make sure that our folks are safe and secure. That includes not just our teachers and our administrators, but our support staff, our grounds crew, our bus drivers. We value all of the people who value their time working in the Lower Merion School District. When we took a look at the data on when and how to open schools from Children's Hospital primarily, and the work that they did, we followed that as we had a gradual opening of our schools in the fall. We began with our special education students, moved on to our younger students, and eventually to our middle school and high school students. As the fall progressed and as we came close to the Thanksgiving, of course, we followed the Montgomery County closure, and actually closed a few days before that, and we went to remote instruction. Before opening up, what do we look at? We looked at some criteria. The CHOP program says, you know what, if you're gonna stay in hybrid or return to hybrid, you should be between 5% positivity rate and a 9% positivity rate. We, at the last information we have from Montgomery County, we are at about a 4.7% positivity rate, up from about 3 point, I can't remember exactly what it was, Terry, you might remember. This morning I asked Dr. Rubin from CHOP Policy Council, what do you have for us for positivity rates? And theirs have traditionally been higher for a number of reasons. It's a smaller group of students, but he looked at us, he said, we're about 7.1, up from about 6. So it's not a huge spike. So we believe that along with our high school and middle school students who might voluntarily stay home and de-densify, that we could bring folks back safely. We're looking at that. We feel that this is something that makes sense for us. But it is as I've said in the past, something that's going to be a moving target. We're going to continue to look and see where we are. So with that, when I had an email exchange with Dr. Rubin today, he said, look, there's a couple of things that are on the horizon that are going to be working for us. One is a reporting app. It's going to arrive in the region. I think that from Texas, apparently that's going to help with contact tracing. And the second thing that we're excited about, the state is, I'm reading this now, the state is going to provide a simplified application for the CLIA license. This is the license required if we're going to do testing, sentinel testing for students for the county health department. And that'll be for all the schools under one application. So our hope, meaning his hope, is to realize this early in the week, and then initiate a testing on school sites by next week. In that light, he says, I'm hoping that you, meaning Lower Merion, will be one of the districts to begin implementing next week. So he put us in touch with some folks that we can work with. So we're looking at these things again with an eye towards strong mitigation, keeping all of the rules in place, and really working hard to make sure that our students, that our teachers, and our staff in general are as safe and as we can make it. Which leads me into where we are with our health and safety. The board, we brought a health and safety plan to the board at the last meeting. The board was not comfortable with the health and safety plan, specifically around the issues of competition. We've revised that. We want to bring that to the board tonight. We also want to share with the board in broad strokes that it's not just about athletics, that we're also taking a look at how we can enhance other extracurricular activities. So with that, I've got with me both high school principals and both activity and athletic directors, Mr. Ferguson and Mr. Stroop. And I think Mr. Stroop is going to go first. Do I have that right?
Yes, I'm going to open with athletics. Ms. LaPere, you're going to bring the slides up and I'll give a summary, or do you want me to just go through the plan?
Sure. Is that that's the winter health and safety one?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay.
So we did revise our health and safety plan, specifically around competition. But I'm going to open by talking about our decision-making guidance and metrics. So currently we're using the CHOP Policy Center's guidance for athletics. It was most recently updated November 5th. Currently, they still have a 9% threshold for positivity rate. And as Mr. Copeland talked about before, when we're talking about positivity rate, we're looking at local data, specifically the Lower Merion School District. One of the updates that we also put in was about school closure. So if we have any school closure related to staff and student transmission, we will be suspending all in-person practices and/or competition if that were the case. and not have any in-person meetings. Now,
Let
our
me just
school-
mention, I neglected to mention, Jason, in my opening, that one of the things that we had to agree to return to hybrid was to fit under the specific guidelines and metrics for the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the Pennsylvania Health. I think we talked about this the last time, and communication has gone out to the community about, given the size of the school and the transmission rates within that school, whether or not we would be able to remain open. If we have to close because we've hit those thresholds, we wouldn't close the school and leave athletics open. Athletics would have to close also. Sorry, Jason.
That's correct. And we would also, at that point, we would have no in-person activities as well. And Mr. Ferguson will be talking about that a little bit later. Can you go to the next slide, please? So our current proposed practice schedule would actually begin this Wednesday, and it would be from December 9th through December 23rd. Different teams would be alternating through Monday through Friday. And then all teams would have the availability of Saturday because we can space out our different groups in our facilities on Saturdays. And that would go up until we break for the holiday. And then as of December 28th, 29th, and 30th, and then January 2nd as well, over the holiday, we would have a Saturday schedule. And then once we come back on January 4th, returning, we would resume our alternating practice schedule at that point, Monday through Friday, with all teams available to practice on Saturdays, again, because we can space them out in our facilities and allow enough time for that space to clear out before we bring the next group in. Can you go to the next slide, please? An update that we made at the end of the fall season and will be continuing regarding masking. So all student athletes and coaches will be masked at all times during practices. The only exceptions to that would be a water break that's socially distanced, or while a student athlete is in the pool actively swimming. And we have a lot of safety protocols around the pool in particular. But that would be the only time where a student athlete would have their mask off. You have the next slide, please. So some updated specific safety information. So we currently have a capacity limit of 25 people per space. That is inclusive of all student athletes and all staff. So we're being very conscious about those limits in our different facilities. Locker rooms will only be open after school for students who are in school to change prior to a practice. We'll be closing locker rooms during and after practices, so they'll not be able to be returned to. Students will remove all equipment from the locker room after they change and bring it into their practice facility. In each of our gyms and our pool at this point, we've put down socially distanced markers where students will have an individual space to go to and put their things when they go in the gym. So, we have created a space for them to do that after they leave the locker room. Specifically for ice hockey right now, we are operating with dry land workouts only. We do not have any on ice practices at this time. We're working closely with the ice hockey club, taking a look at what's happening with metrics and also what's happening in the hockey community. Boys and girls indoor track. At this point, all practices will be outdoors, and we will be keeping an eye on the weather, and any inclement weather, we will be canceling practice because we do not have the availability of indoor facilities to house those groups at this time. Swimming and diving, specific safety equipment information. Again, masks will be worn at all times except while a student athlete is in the water or a socially distanced water break. Student athletes will enter the pool deck using the exterior doors and report to an individual station where they'll have all their equipment, their towel, their mask, their bag. And the reason that we're using the exterior doors to the pool is so that we can control the number of people in the locker room area, which has been identified as a problem area and is a much smaller space in that facility. We also put a limit on the number of student athletes in a locker room. And again, this is only for student athletes who are in school to change prior to practice. We have a seven-person limit in the locker rooms in the pool facility. And then the last thing, student athletes are being asked to bring out either waterproof container or bag to store their masks when they are entering the water. So when a student athlete is preparing to enter the pool, they'll leave their individual area, they'll bring their mask and their towel to the blocks. They'll take their mask off, put it in the bag or waterproof box, place it on the blocks with their towel, so that when they get out of the water, they'll be able to get out of the water, dry their face with their towel, and then put their mask back on before returning to their individual station. And those are the main updates for the athletics health and safety plan. Mr. Copeland, we turn it over to.
Yeah, why don't we go through the extracurricular and then we'll open it up to the board for questions.
So Ballard Kidwood Middle School, all BC clubs and activities are offered via Zoom. The number of clubs this school year have been reduced since some of the extracurriculars do not lend themselves to delivery in a virtual environment. Some of the club offerings are GSA, Art Club, Creative Writing, Newspaper, Gaming Club, Reading Olympics, and TSA at the middle school level. Can we move to the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
At Welsh Valley, all clubs and activities are offered via Zoom. Has been reduced, same thing as at BC, and some of the offerings there: Art Club, Build On, Debate, Empower, Project Success, School Play, Science Olympiad, and TSA.
How are they doing the school play, Tom?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how they're going to do it. We did ours via Zoom, and I think their people are in contact with our sponsor to see how we pulled off our Zoom play.
Okay.
Next slide. At Harriton, currently clubs are meeting over Zoom. All clubs have met virtually. Some clubs have met in person. HTC Costume Department, Pitch Please, Science Olympiad, and Robotics. Also, the Harriton Banner, the newspaper for Harriton High School, has created an online version. So that is being published online, and kids can go to that through the link. At Lower Merion, clubs are running over Zoom as well. All clubs have met virtually. Clubs that have met in person at this time are LM Players, Marionite, and Dance Team. The Marionite has, as well as like Harriton's online newspaper, has published their newspaper online. So that's continuing to, the kids are doing a great job writing and getting the stories out throughout this year. One thing that we've been doing is virtual competitions, and at both schools in Latin Club, DECA, Science Olympiad, Speech and Debate, Math Club, Robotics, FBLA, Dogma, all these groups that we used to go to the competitions have now created them online, and we're actually able to attend them virtually. The one nice thing is that one of the sponsors said to me is that they're able to compete against teams from all over the country now because they're doing it online, and it's not so much a regional competition. Can we go to the next slide? At Harriton Lower Merion, we're having a lot of virtual conferences. There's a Model UN conference coming up this weekend. SAGE at Harriton and Lower Merion are setting up their conference that will be coming up soon. Environmental Club, Build On, and the Medical Club have all done virtual conferences. As a matter of fact, December 19th, Build On will be doing a virtual gala fundraiser from 5 to 8 to help fundraise for their 10th school. Go to the next one. Virtual performances at Harriton. They did Our Town November 20th and 21st through Zoom. They have the One Act Festivals January 14th to the 6th and 16th. Working April 15th to 17th. And Players is looking at festival of individual performances. And Jazz Band is looking at a way to get into some virtual performances as well.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So we are getting, all the kids are getting the ability to do their activities through the virtual platform that is working pretty well right now for our clubs and activities.
Questions, comments?
Great. Thank you so much for those presentations, Mr. Stroop and Mr. Ferguson. I'd like to open up the questions to the board and ask that we sort of separate our questions into two groups. If we could, for our first set of questions, focus on the reopening and questions about that. Ms. Kalish?
Okay.
Sorry, I apologize. I had my hand raised regarding sports, but I just wanted to point out, because I know it hadn't been clear in the past necessarily to everybody, that the data we're using to decide is Lower Merion based and not all of Montgomery County.
Thank you. And I wanted to I'll ask a follow-up question to that around specific that the data that we're using, because there are a lot of different data sources out there. So Mr. Copeland, could you speak a little bit to which data specifically the district is using to when making these decisions?
So the Montgomery County data is coming from the Montgomery County Department of Health, and they've been keeping a 14-day running record of positivity and incidence rates. I believe that they're going to increase that to 7 days. And so they've set up a specific for school districts to be able to get the information. So that's theirs. And the benefit of that is they can sort of smooth it out a little and get probably a little bit more exacting number just for the school district. And you can even break it out by township. And the CHOP data we get from CHOP, but that data is only those individuals who go to CHOP to be tested. So I just took it off the screen, but I think the 7-day number that we had gotten was a relatively small sample. Terry, I think it was about 150 students. So I think the Montgomery data is more robust, but I was interested just to see what they had. So that's what we're using right now.
Thank you. And also just another quick follow-up that the Montgomery County Office of Public Health is providing that specific sort of school district-based data to each of the school districts within its within the county, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Mooring?
Yes, thank you. And sorry about before I had a sports question, but then I put my hand down, but I had one here as well. But for the reopening, and we discussed it briefly in our exec meeting, but I just wanted to reiterate here for parents that are concerned about sending their kids back to school and are voluntarily keeping them home, even though the Lmsd program is not available. You know, for high school and middle school, kids can go on and stream, but are there going to be supports for elementary school children who are opting to stay at home and be virtual?
If those students were not part of LMSD at home or not part of LMVA and recently decided that they wanted to keep their students home, we really don't have the ability to begin new classes there. We don't have the staffing per se for that, but I know Dr. Gaudioso and Dr. McGowan are working with the local elementary schools. I don't know which one wants to speak to the issue. on my screen, they're both sitting next to one another. Jen?
How about Dr.
Yeah,
Gaudioso?
I can jump in. So in terms of quarantine planning, just because we knew we would have students facing those experiences through the year, our supervisors have worked with teams of teachers to develop some instructional resources that'll support students if they miss the core lesson. It might be like a recorded instructional lesson. We're working to make those available. We're also, those will be available to the teachers to assign to students who are out for an extended period, and that will help them keep pace with their work. It still requires the students to primarily be asynchronous. So we're working toward having checkpoints during the day where a staff member can check in with them, make sure they understand the assignment, the expectations for the day, answer any questions about the assignment. And we're hoping that that'll start at some point this week. With our quarantine groups, and we're going to try to make that available to the expanded group as well. You know, to the degree that that's possible. We certainly understand that our teachers are with you know, the in-person cohort, so we're looking at other opportunities as well, how we can expand that point of connection because we know that's so important for elementary students.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Ms. Ackman.
Hi, thank you. And Mr. Copeland, thank you for the update on being an early implementer of these tests that may, you know, seem to be on the way now from Montgomery County and Dr. Rubin. I just wanted to know if you or Terry could provide a little more detail about, you know, who or how you would start with in terms of testing, and it would occur on school property, just, you know, or if there would be one site centrally at the admin building, and if those details are still to be worked out, that's fine.
They're still to be worked out. We're not there yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Gilbert?
Thank you. My question, Mr. Copeland, is around, I know we've been getting comments from particularly high school students, with people concerned that there aren't as many high school students coming in person, those who had chosen hybrid, larger numbers, particularly of the older students, stayed home today. And so we've been getting questions about, you know, why don't we just shut down high school? And I was wondering if you could talk about why, I believe the principals are on, why you all feel it's important to have that in-person option, as long as we feel we can do it in a you know, health and safety way, as well as in terms of operational issues.
Well, Dr. McGloin and I met with both of the high school principals today. And Sean, I know, why don't you start? What your thoughts on moving forward?
So thank you, everybody. Happy Monday. Yes, we do have numerous students who are moving to the Lmsb at home.
Where are you at? In terms of the number of kids who could be there today, do you have about 50% of them?
Just under 50% were here today of our cohort. So about 47%, I think, was what our attendance was. So within that, we also had many of the students who have struggled with virtual learning were the ones that was very important for them to be in school today, for us to see catch up and get them back on track with things that they needed to do. And that's pretty much what I saw most of the day today, was individual students catching up with our teachers and the supports that they needed and provided, and just getting some face-to-face time with people.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Weinstein?
Similar to Mr. Hughes, we had roughly 50% of our students of cohort A, today's cohort A day, attend in person. Many, since the announcement of coming back, have moved to Lmsb at home and didn't feel comfortable coming back. And many more of them have stayed in our hybrid program but didn't come into school today and access from home. So we have, it was our least amount of attendance in school since we started hybrid today.
And Mr. Copeland, can you follow up with just some information about middle school and elementary attendance? Generally.
Middle school, I know elementary was pretty good. Middle school, Dr. McGloin, you spoke with the principals there.
Yeah, it was similar to the high school. It was about 50 to 60% attendance, and then our elementaries were the highest in the district today.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on some of the numbers questions and wanted to refer to the policy lab guidance that had been sort of one of the things that guided the district's decision to open back in, at sort of the transition to opening that went through the middle of October when the high school and secondary students went back. And I wanted to, I know that the link to this document went out in the letter, the communication to families today. But I wanted to talk because a lot of, there were a number of comments around that people felt that once the area hit a 5% positivity rate, that the schools would close down. And I wanted to follow up a little bit with what was in the policy lab guidance that talked about if schools were already in hybrid, as we have been, that if the positivity rate in our area was between 5 and 9%, that we could continue and stay sort of cautiously and paying attention to what was going on, but to stay in the hybrid model. And I wanted to know if you could speak to that a little bit, or maybe I just did all of that.
Thanks for the long question. You gave me the opportunity to find it in front of me here. So it says all decisions to return in-purpose instruction should be weighed in the context of the strength of health and safety plans to mitigate within school transmission. So the threshold, a stable or declining weekly case incidence approaching 10 per 100,000 and less than 5% test positivity. That would be guidance. The guidance then says to reopen schools previously online for full in-class or hybrid instruction in compliance with state and district guidance. It then says a stable or declining weekly case inference between 10 to 35 and less than 5%. Consider incremental reopening strategy beginning with the return of special needs and or elementary age children in the classroom. And that's what we did. We began with first our special needs students in the elementary and high school, and then we moved to elementary, young elementary, and eventually to high school students. It then says a stable case incidence and test positivity between 5 to 9%. And the guidance is, if you're in that situation, if already resumed in-class instruction, cautiously continue with your plan, including incremental reopenings, provided there is no evidence of linked transmission between students or staff during the school day. When linked transmission occurs, consult with the health departments to guide decisions for classroom or school closures. Well, actually, and I'll ask Mrs. Quinlan about this, the way I understand the new guidance is even if they're not linked transmissions, but you hit a certain metric, you have to close, correct?
That's correct. With the attestation that we filed to PDE and the Pennsylvania Department of Health, there are very structured parameters upon which we would need to close immediately. And depending on the size of the school, it would be a particular number of students and or staff with positive cases, or it could be linked transmission. And linked transmission would mean 2 or more cases that are linked. So that it's very defined, and it's school by school based. And all this is done in collaboration with the Office of Public Health.
So there might even be a reason to be 9.1, and you say, well, what do we do? And we talk about it, and we see.
Correct.
Right, but it says 9% or greater test positivity. In that case, The guidance is to revert to online schooling only, as testing positivity would indicate a widespread community transmission. But again, we would consult with the Montgomery County Department. So.
Right, and they also provide us with the direction as to how long a school must close for, so that appropriate contact tracing and cleaning can be done during that time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board around the reopening and testing or those issues? All right. So then why don't we move on to questions around the activities and athletics information as presented by Mr. Ferguson and Mr. Stroop. Ms. Kalish?
Thank you, Ms. Klein. So my question and my primary concern with the plan revolves around the treatment of wrestling. And I know the last time that we had a health and safety plan before the board, wrestling was detailed with a specific breakdown, like it was like in this presentation, like swimming was. And I was just kind of hoping for a little clearer picture on what wrestling will be. My understanding is that now everything will be masked, but I'm unclear as to whether all the practices will be purely conditioning, or will there still be close contact drills practicing physical wrestling with kids even masked up in each other's faces and bodies?
So as of right now, we did update again, like you stated, that there will be masks at all times in the wrestling rooms. A couple of the things that we've done to around the wrestling rooms in particular is we're breaking into smaller groups. So we have multiple sessions to reduce the number of student athletes that are in the room at one time. Within those groups, there's smaller pods, as I discussed in the last meeting, so that you're wrestling with typically 2 or 3 people on a regular basis. You have that small group. Both Mr. Ferguson and I have reached out to our wrestling coaches and are working with our wrestling coaches. Right now, the focus is on strength and conditioning in the wrestling room, in addition to drill work, where they can do drill work. It is not safe to live wrestle with a wrestling mask on, and we are not moving forward with that at this point.
So there'll be no actual wrestling?
Correct. Live wrestling.
I very much appreciate that clarification. It makes me feel a lot more comfortable with what would be going on. I appreciate all the thought and effort that went into that.
We also have purchased shirts that have masks attached to them that pull up and go around the ears for the wrestlers. For all the winter sports athletes, we bought those so that when kids are out practicing, they have those shirts that came out to also make sure the mask doesn't fall off as easy, and it's all part of the shirt.
Thank you. Mr. Mori?
Thanks. One question around the closure. And so I saw that there would be practice when the slide went up, practice during winter break, which is customary. But I was wondering if that following week, when the school is going to go into kind of post-holiday virtual, will athletics continue to happen and practices then, or will they close with the schools?
No, they could continue because they wouldn't have closed because of positivity rates. They wouldn't have closed because of transmission.
Right, but my understanding is that we're closing schools out of caution, right? Because there's the assumption that, so we're closing schools because we're out of an abundance of caution. So I'm just, again, I know we wouldn't be closing because of a reported incident, but that
right.
Same caution for which we're closing schools, why would we continue to practice?
I'm recommending that we close during that week because it gives us some time past the holidays. So if the students are, if they're competing during the holidays, this would just be a continuation of that, and hopefully they will have kept their distance and so forth during that period of time. They also, if we ever do open up to live, I don't know why I say live, to regular competition, we'd have to have a certain number of practices, legitimate practices, before we went to that. I mean, I understand it sounds like a contradiction, but it's a difference of a relatively small number of students in a very highly defined situation as opposed to bringing the whole group back.
And just one follow-up, not to that, but separate, just a second question is around, so my understanding is that the contact sports, basketball, wrestling, et cetera, right now would be limited to drills and conditioning, but not competition. And even in their practices, there would be kind of non-contact practice.
Would basketball scrimmage?
We will have to give the flexibility to do some drill work and some scrimmaging at times, especially when we're trying to evaluate student athletes. When we're talking about cutting student athletes, we do want to give them.
Basketball has tryouts, so they.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, has there been any consideration of, looking at non-contacts, track, swimming, as opposed to considering them all under the same bubble in terms of approval for health and safety?
Well, the two sports that we're, I guess the answer is no when it comes to basketball, Mr. Mooring, but the two sports that we still remain highly concerned about are wrestling and ice hockey. And the guidance from both CHOP and the county has been there's great concern when students take the ice, and obviously we remain concerned about wrestling, but we have not ruled out the possibility of like a basketball, but we would have to come back to the board to get approval for that.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I can also add that the guidance from the CHOP Policy Center lumps all of the sports together in that guidance with that 9% threshold as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ackman?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I just wanted to say I appreciate all the thought that went into the plan, and I thought it was great to also get the activities update about all the other things going on at the high schools and middle schools, which we haven't really talked about extensively at the board because they've just been going on and have worked well. And even though they're mostly virtual, though that they have still created community, they've engaged kids. And I think that there's a lot of concern about emotional and mental health right now of our teens. And this is one way that we can really help with that. And the same thing with the sports. I think it is a community that's safely done, can be very beneficial. I do worry about right now, there's, when people aren't leaving their houses even to walk to school, let alone to participate in other ways, that's not good for physical and mental health either. So thank you for all your work and the information. And that's a long preamble to my question, which is, can you just give a brief summary of about what the rest of the Central League is doing, and competition for the league officially starts? Like, what are we kind of on track with the rest of the league right now, or what's the update there?
And ask the league president.
I was going to.
Okay.
We can give an update on that. So
Okay.
currently 9 of the 12 schools have started practice in some way, shape, or form at this point. As a whole, the league would like to plan to start competition as of the week of January 11th. We're currently working on a finalized league schedule, which we should have at our meeting next week, which Mr. Ferguson, correct me I'm wrong, but I think it's the 17th or 18th, one of those 2 days. We'll be
17th.
discussing those seasons or those specific schedules.
And just to say, the principals asked the ADs to build the most flexible schedules possible for all the schools to start, whenever they were able or capable of starting their practices, and many already have.
Okay, thanks so much. And thanks for all your work with the league too. That's really great.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert.
Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate that we've been looking at all the co-curricular activities, which I know we asked for that information, so we appreciate it. And I appreciate all the work that's being done to ensure that our students and coaches are safe. I just want to be clear because that at this time we are not voting on competition. We are voting only on sort of training, as we did initially with fall sports, to try and get a sense of what we could do safely. I understand that that's more conservative than the rest of the Central League, but that is what we're actually voting on, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to follow up with a question around the coaches and if there's been any, excuse me, any concern or discussions with the coaches, if the coaches have concerns around practicing at this point, or whether all of the coaches have felt comfortable moving forward.
All the coaches have felt comfortable moving forward. Jason and I, in our meeting with the winter coaches, asked that question. If anyone's not comfortable, please let us know. And all the coaches are, whenever we're approved, they're ready to go.
Great.
I understand that's a philosophy that we followed throughout this entire situation, where we've tried to be as accommodating as we possibly could with people who felt concerns. Megan and the HR people have worked conscientiously with all of our staff under whether they're teachers or administrators or custodians or whoever, to try and find the safest route for people to contribute to the school system.
Thank you. And I wanted to add a comment around school sports versus travel sports. One of the things that leads me to be more comfortable with approving practices and a school sport situation is that it is truly highly regulated, not only within Lower Merion School District, but within the Central League. In terms of what we saw in the fall, there were no outbreaks among Lower Merion schools. If there was a student on a team at a different school, which I think happened maybe 2 or 3 times, those teams didn't play. And often sports, some of the teams of different sports wouldn't play from that school as well. So, and for example, with soccer, there was a referee at one of the girls' games that didn't want to wear a mask, and that referee was asked to leave because it didn't follow our rules. And so I think that the concept of having a more regulated program where there isn't sort of that infrastructure available in travel sports, and that is one of the things that makes me more comfortable to have school sports, also because if kids are playing in a school league, they won't be playing in for example, for basketball, the AAU basketball league won't be going on. And without those school sports, that leaves openings for, sort of the travel leagues will fill that void. And there aren't the same level of infrastructure and control over those sports. So I think that for me personally, it leads me more likely to be to support a school sport situation, especially starting with just looking at practices. So, does anyone else have any?
The smiling at Mr. Stroop, the referee bouncer there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if unless there are any other questions from the board, I would like to move on to audience recognition. So at this time, we're going to allow for 10 minutes for you to submit your questions and comments via the chat feature. Please make sure to provide your name and where you live or reside within the district. It doesn't need to be a street name, just a general neighborhood is fine. But it is important that you include your name and your general location in the district for your comment to be shared. Each comment will be read by Ms. Brooks. So Ms. LaPera,
we're also asking for only one comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, correct. If you could limit yourself to one comment per person, that would be helpful as well. So Mrs. LaPera, can you please start the timer and open the chat feature? Thank you.
And it is now open.
Okay, welcome back everyone to the board meeting. And now Ms. Brooks, if you could please go ahead and read the public comment.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jackie Zong. I live in Narberth. I'm a senior at Harriton High School. There have been 11 student COVID-19 cases and 12 staff cases in past months at Harriton. However, the district repeatedly claims that there are no in-school transmission. How does the district know that the virus isn't spreading in the building without mass testing? COVID-19 carriers can be asymptomatic, but still spread the virus. I am Tony Sackstetter, a CE and LMHS parent, Bala Kenwood. What was the district's attendance rate for today for both students and faculty? Our Lower Merion High School 10th grader reports that today a significant number of teachers were absent today and the number of students attending was estimated to be 1/5, way down from prior hybrid levels. So without teachers, the cafeteria was filled to near capacity with students on laptops as they could not be teacherless classrooms without supervision. That does not at all seem to be close to a satisfactory environment in compliance with established standards for health and safety or education. How do you intend to address ongoing or continuing teacher shortages, and how can a student's required attendance at school be beneficial if they only end up on a laptop in the cafeteria without an instructor? Our names are Sloan Peterson and Christine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just, we did give the student attendance. I think there were about 30 teachers absent at Lower Merion. Mr. Weinstein, how many absences did you have?
We ended up with 17, I believe.
17, and the last commenter said students should be required. They're not required to come into school. That's a choice. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms.
Our names are Sloan Peterson and Christina Sniffen, both students at Harriton High School who live in Gladwin and Wynwood, respectively. While we understand that the elementary and middle school schedules need to be addressed as well, the two of us do not know enough about their in-person experience to comment on it tonight. However, for high schoolers, the hybrid model is the worst of both worlds. 2 days of in-person instruction can never and should never justify the risk of spreading this deadly virus. As many know, we started a petition because we feel that the decision for Lower Merion schools to stay open is not the most beneficial to high school students. The hybrid schedule requires 6 hours of continuous screen time with only 5-minute breaks between classes. My name is Nikayla Ireland and I go to Bala Kenwood Middle School. I, like many other people, are afraid of getting sick and getting family members sick. Stop ignoring us about the climate of COVID-19. This is a serious issue that seems to be taken quite lightly when it shouldn't be at all. In the last 7 days, the Lower Merion area has gotten 119 positive cases in the last 7 days. You claim to care about everyone involved in the district. If that was so, why haven't you spoke about bus drivers dying and a staff member on a ventilator? If you cared, we would still be home to keep everyone safe. You're putting bus drivers, staff, teachers, and students at risk of getting sick. Stop spreading lies. Do what's best for the community. Anna Prada, Annie Pragada, Junior, Lower Merion High School, Wynwood. Superintendent Copeland, You said in your letter today that in-person education benefits the most. However, this system only benefits those who are able, willing to go into school. Students who cannot go in receive a significantly worse learning experience, and I have seen firsthand. Whereas fully remote education allows everyone to get an equal learning experience. In addition, this current hybrid schedule has placed a huge mental health toll on both students and teachers, which is another factor that has seemingly been ignored. Why are students being forced to decide between the health and safety of them and their families and their education? Joanna Charup, Lower Marion High School. What made you follow through the decision to reopen during times when the virus seems to be at its worst, despite schools being closed when the virus was more controlled? What would you say to students and parents concerned for the safety of the staff? Will you continue with in-person learning after winter break? Carol Ann Goldsweiler from Ardmore. The fact that our board and superintendent is disregarding the health and safety of our students by opening when we are in an unmitigated period of community spread, bus drivers are dying, teachers and administrators are falling ill, hospitals are near capacity, and contact tracing cannot keep up with the sheer volume of positive cases is absolutely abhorrent. I have witnessed my own child's principal pull down his mask to address students and parents at dismissal. And I have had my child report to me that staff pulls off their masks to call students at dismissal. Now we're discovering that if I choose to keep my child safe by having her participate remotely, she will be penalized in the form of absences, even if she participates remotely throughout the day. This is unacceptable and not in alignment with guidance by PDE regarding attendance. Worse is that she will be penalized for full day absences, even though she is only missing 2.5 hours of instruction.
I'll ask Mrs. Schaefer to discuss attendance.
Yeah, this is a question that has come up a few times, and there are a couple parts to this. And one is just as a school district, our obligation to ensure the safety of students and their attendance. So the reason we track attendance and maintain a record of when a student is present or absent is so that we can ensure that we're doing the follow-up that's expected of us and has been established by us to make sure that students are where they're supposed to be. So that's one reason we make the notation that if students are absent. In the context of what we're dealing with right now, another reason why we include that notation in the record is so that when we engage in the collaborative efforts of contact tracing with the Office of Public Health, that we have an indication of when a student was in school and when a student is not in school. So that helps to create some efficiencies in our process when we note a student as being absent. We have continued to explore ways in which we can increase our flexibility for families at this time, should they decide to keep their children at home. We've increased the number of days where a parent can excuse an absence to 14 this year. We're continuing to evaluate that. The rules around truancy, just for those that may not be familiar in how they've been updated in recent years, there's expectations for the school to engage in collaborative work with families, including the development of a school attendance improvement plan. So I know the word truancy is really scary, and it's not one that we use lightly. Another important reason why we track attendance is to make sure that we're putting in place supports that are needed to help students and families who are not able to attend school and not able to engage with the work. We know in these challenging times that there are ways in which families are able to continue to engage, and we're working, as Dr. Gaudioso said earlier, with ways to connect our elementary families with the curriculum during this time, so that the engagement and connection is really what is important to us. And I know, again, absences seem like a punitive piece, but really for where we are right now, it's important for us from a safety perspective, and to make sure that even though we know that those of you that are here are the engaged families, we have families that aren't connected. And so we really need to make sure that our protocols continue to be in place so we can follow up with those families and provide that essential support.
Thank you.
My name is Philip Gow, and I live in Wynwood. If we shut down and return to the all online schedule, would the in-school practice facilities remain open? Melissa Freeman, Penn Valley. In regards to absences, in order for it to be fair and equitable across age groups, I believe elementary school absences should be one absence for every 2 days missed.
Just a quick, so if we shut down as because of incidences while we're in school, then there would not be athletics.
Ruth Jenkins, Wynwood. How are the buses going to handle the students when competition starts?
We have bus drivers who work overtime, or we have contracted buses, as we've had in the past.
Carol Hagan, Narberth. My question is why Lower Merion School District is now relying on COVID data for Lower Merion Township only. It feels like threading the needle and the sort of exceptionalism that has created so many problems with COVID in the United States. The point was made at least one previous board meeting that we do not live in a bubble, and neither does COVID. Rebecca from Wynwood. I would like to know what options ES may have at this time if we elect to keep our children at home. Specifically, while I understand the modified attendance policy for this year, I do not understand why our kids cannot be marked as late or early dismissal if they elect to learn virtually, asynchronously during their in-person portion of the day, but are doing at least half the day with their cohorts 100%, as they would be in any form of the hybrid model. Can we further modify this policy so that our kids are not being counted as absent for full days when doing 100% of their work from their certified classroom teachers, and also zooming in for special supports, et cetera, as scheduled? Thank you.
Again, Megan, I think, I'm sorry, Megan, you're looking into that, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed part of your question. Yeah, we'll continue to explore ways in which we can make sure that we're engaging our elementary students, and as I hope was conveyed to those that are listening, it's a technical piece for us to make sure that we're doing the right thing by all families to mark, to use the coding that we're using, but we certainly can continue and will continue to look at that.
Peter Soldersich, Havertown. The district is offering the option for secondary ed students to stay home without an absence, but is not offering the same flexibility to elementary. We chose to keep my child home today, and were charged as absent, despite working on her assigned work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. One reason of many that elementary attendance was so much higher than secondary is because of the draconian absence policy the district is enforcing. Pennsylvania Department of Education has issued guidance on attendance flexibility due to COVID-19, which the district does not appear to be following. Moreover, because elementary is in person 4 days instead of 2 full days, 4 half days instead of 2 full days, absences are consumed as twice the rate. A parent who keeps their student at home between today and winter break will use 11 of 14 absences. A MS sibling for the same amount of time would use 4 to 5. Many attempts by myself and others to get the district to explain why this is full day absent rather than present but asynchronous have been ignored. Please fix. Hagang Lee, Narberth. Will the school district offer the option of remote education in the upcoming spring semester? We really need that option based on current pandemic rising. Allison Simpson, Gladwin. 1, we need to address curriculum and the way it addresses advanced and regressed students. Who do we email? 2, need to emphasize schools are safer than bars, restaurants, but if kids are going home to high-risk adults, there should be caution. You should try to encourage a way for elementary to go virtual and reconfigure the current setup. And 3, the 5% is misleading. Look how many low risk got tested to be with others during Thanksgiving. My positive rates were 20% despite this. And if you take away pre-Thanksgiving checks, more than that. How do you only base on our district? 4, can't we use the honor system to stratify who comes to school And as Lower Merion principal said, focus on those who really need. Do 50% really need? And 6, no indoor sports week after Christmas, too high risk. Jamie Selway, Haverford. To new President Klain, congratulations on your election to an important leadership role at this critical time. Please bring fresh energy, pragmatism, and open-mindedness to bear to meet our current challenges for the benefit of our children. Lower Merion School District parents look forward to doing all we can to help you successfully lead our community forward. Christina Chang, Penn Valley, would you consider another all families survey again this month to assess whether for middle school, high school, the number of students, families who want in-person versus virtual will warrant combining in-person cohort A, B to 4 days in person. For elementary schools, certain private and public school districts are placing plastic shields at each desk, distancing only 3 feet and allowing 4 to 5 full days in person. Annie Wang, Wynwood. I believe that going back is not the correct option. Reportedly, 2 bus drivers have died and 2 faculty members have contracted COVID. We students should have a say in this matter, and the majority of us believe that returning to hybrid is senseless and illogical. Many of the teachers are opting to stay home now so that most of a student's day, if they have returned to school, is spent in the library, but for the wrong reasons. Furthermore, I've seen what it's like during lunchtime. Students forgo social distancing in the stead of socialization. It's simply irresponsible that we return to the hybrid schedule. Alexandra O'Neill, Wynwood. It's appalling that you have spent so much time tonight focused on sports when 50% of the families who choose to trust your guidance around reopening did not feel safe enough to send their children to school today. Why are you not willing to address the clear discomfort and worsening metrics in our area, both in Lower Merion and the surrounding area? When we have staff coming from other areas, and obviously we closely border Philly, Haverford, etc., why are you only looking at Lower Merion metrics? Maggie Rastami, Gladwin, Welsh Valley Middle School. If my daughter decides to stay virtual in the next few sessions, do I need to fill out the absence form? Stacy Pennock, Narberth. In September, the threshold to open was less than 5%. Now it's suddenly between 5 to 9%. Before Thanksgiving, with the rise in positivity, less than it was now. Mr. Copeland closed the schools. How can we understand the rules when they keep changing? Prior to September, we were told that we had to look at neighboring communities' rates as well as ours. Now we're being told only our rates matter. It's very hard to trust this board and superintendent to do the right thing when the parameters for decision-making constantly change. Please explain the ever-changing rules. Jeff Gardner, Ardmore. 3 kids, elementary, middle, and high school. Time and again, we've debated the health impact of children's sports. Time and again, the children have proven that they can do it safely. Will it be perfect? No. Will it be the best thing for their social, emotional, and physical development? Absolutely. Give the kids a chance. They've earned it. Melissa Levin, 119 Old Gulf Road and Wynwood. Many local districts are using the live streaming at the elementary level. It's not ideal, but it gives elementary level families an opportunity for equitable education if they're quarantining or sick, or if their children are sick at home, or their child is terrified to come to school. The metrics have changed since we decided to do Lmsb at home or hybrid. No one is discussing that. We knew there would be ups and downs, but did not know they would change the positivity rate. Please do the right thing and live stream the elementary schools.
Jennifer, could you talk a little bit about the live streaming real quick?
Sure. In the summer, we looked at a lot of variations. The live streaming initially, when we looked at elementary versus secondary, elementary, it really is not a lecture model. There's a lot of small group instruction, trying to coordinate what that would look like. Additionally, the technology challenges. At the time, we were looking at LMSD as an option to provide families with the long-term synchronous instruction. And trying to approximate in class, in person, what typically happens in a school day where there's a teacher maybe doing some direct instruction for a short amount of time. And then if you picture like an accordion-like design where the teacher's with a large group and then moving into small groups, it's not as attuned, I guess, for live streaming as if it's a lecture. So it would take some reorganization of even the practices in place. The concern was watering down the quality of the in-person experience because we were trying to reduce some of the screen time that kids were having and the amount of time we had kids on computers. So really looking at ways to maximize the in-person while the kids were with us. The decision earlier was made not to live stream. What I will say is we're continually exploring how can we increase the connection with students during the school day, because we're recognizing that there are some families who are struggling with the decision, on this returned pathway, where we're trying to have kids in school and prioritizing that. So we are exploring as many options as possible right now, but the decision earlier was not to move in that direction, but we are trying to provide some additional recorded resources for families. And like I said earlier, we're hoping to start those this week so that if somebody is missing in-person instruction, we have some additional resources available for them.
Thank you.
Ken Brownstein, Wynwood, Pennsylvania. In the interest of transparency, how about Lower Merion School District update your dashboard to enable parents to track where each school is with respect to COVID cases and potential closing, so that we can see daily occurrence and incident rates? How long are you planning to abide by the metrics guidance that was communicated? Early in the year, you presented a 9% positivity rate would revert to online schooling, given we're significantly above that rate. We should revert to online. How long can we expect this plan to last before it's changed again? It's a district race, and the school board should be aware that if students elementary age are required to stay home, there's limited to no support provided. Furthermore, if a teacher volunteered to Zoom the student into their class while the student's out of school, the administrators have instructed the teachers that this is not allowed. The administrators are now actively working to withhold instruction from elementary students that are not.
I believe I can't speak to the specific charge, but we do update the dashboard, I believe, on a daily basis, don't we, Bucky?
Yeah, so once we notify the individual school community of cases within the school for that day, our web content producer does update the dashboard. We've been doing it on a daily basis for well over a month now. We are looking with the new 14-day rolling period that the Pennsylvania Department of Health has implemented. We're looking at a new way to try to present that data per school with the 14-day rolling totals. We haven't quite come up with an updatable chart quite yet, but our web content producer is looking at that. And certainly before we get to that 14-day point which started today after the closure, we hope to have some sort of additional chart on the dashboard site that will indicate those 14-day rolling totals. But each individual school community gets a letter whenever there is a case. So the folks in that individual school community can also track that way, in addition to the updates that are listed by school and building each month, and the graph that shows the total numbers for the district.
Thank you.
Lisa Maslow, Balakinwood. It seems as if a great deal of planning has gone into sports and virtual extracurricular activities for the upper grades. Why hasn't this level of planning gone into providing a temporary live virtual option to hybrid families of elementary students who aren't comfortable sending their children to school for the next 2 weeks? My name is Brenna Trachtenberg, and I live in Haverford. Lower Merion School District should not be returning to the hybrid model. In general, families look to schools to see the precedent for what is acceptable at a given moment. The mere fact that Lmsb is open, holding classes and sports practices sends a signal to families and students that gathering in large groups is acceptable right now, when it most certainly is not. When talking about percent positivity rates, it's obvious that the members of the board have found the lowest numbers that they could possibly acquire. There are rates that are far higher than the ones presented. It's absolutely unacceptable that sports are considering being held right now. Lmsb claims to protect its students, but right now they're actively putting them in harm's way. I'm scared for myself and my family. Please revert to the remote model. Jen Cohen, Winwood, looking at the PA COVID-19 early warning dashboard and filtering down to Montgomery County, the PCR percent positivity rate in the last 7 days is 10.3%. The below 5% number you are referencing is outdated, and numbers are rapidly climbing in our area. Why have we not factored the more recent data into our decisions, which specify that above 9% necessitates remote learning? Tara Schisler, Villanova, Harriton student. Switching back and forth from hybrid to virtual does more harm than help to not only students, but the teachers as well in terms of planning purposes. Lmsd school should remain closed until the winter break for a chance of longer hybrid model when it's safer. We also have not had 2 weeks of quarantine since Thanksgiving, where many students and staff travel to see family, thus leaving the option of asymptomatic persons transmitting the disease. It will be harder for students to teacher when there are 3 students in the class and 17 on Zoom. No one likes online school better than in person. We just need to be conscious about who we are around for ours and others' safety. With majority of students online during hybrid model, we're spending 7 hours a day on a computer. Ask yourself, do you want eye strain stress for the children? The constant switch back and forth is detrimental to students' mental health, and we need fully virtual classes. Jen Kelly, Penn Valley, can you clarify what will happen if the positivity rate goes above 9% in terms of hybrid versus full virtual? There is a 7-day rolling average zip code level data available now from the state of PA that shows every zip code in Lower Merion Township already above 9% as of 12/7. Zach Alfred Laveau, Narberth. Will fire drills and lockdown drills be suspended given that the district has shown that it clearly does not care about the safety of its students and staff? Camilla Trody, Bala-Cynwyd, what's the specific reasoning behind shifting back to a hybrid system for only 2 weeks? And why would adding contact winter sports be feasible when attempting to mitigate the risk of going back to school? Hadash Sheffer, LMHS and CES parent, 22,000 people, including 2,200 people, sorry, including students, have signed the petition to offer a virtual option for all students. To ensure it's equitable, it should apply to ES students as well. What do you have to say to these parents, guardians, students who are uncomfortable with the decision you made and do not feel safe in cafeterias and auditoriums when teachers are absent and in school in general? Their voices are being silenced, even as the district veered away from the 5% threshold agreed on in August. Maybe a Khan, 931 Mill Creek Road, Gladwin, Pennsylvania, Harriton High School. Around 2,300 students and parents and even staff members have signed a petition of wanting to go back to our old schedule. And I wanted to ask what your next move or plan would be with that going forward, since such an overwhelming amount of people have agreed. Liam G. Ellenbogen, 23 North Essex Avenue, Narberth, Pennsylvania. As students at Lower Merion, at least in my experience, we've gotten most of our information from teachers and not from the actual school administration emails. Is there a plan to get a steady stream of information to students? Why send everyone back to hybrid at this time? It's so much more stressful for teachers to teach essentially 2 classes. I can understand it for elementary schoolers, but why high schoolers? As a student, I felt my needs were more catered to in the fully online learning environment than the hybrid, since the teacher could give their full attention to one classroom instead of having to multitask. Carrie Ward, Bala-Cynwyd. I'm choosing to keep my children home now because the metrics upon which we agreed to enroll our kids in the default option are no longer the metrics by which Superintendent Copeland is basing his dangerous and illogical decisions regarding reopening schools. I would like to hear the board's explanation as to why elementary age children are not given equitable access to choice pertaining to how they attend school during this pandemic. It goes against logic that my children cannot attend school remotely simply because they are not in middle or high school. We feel we are being punished unfairly as compared to families with middle and high school age children. I also take issue with the fact that my children are being marked absent for a full day when they are still participating in specials and other school-based activities during their mandated asynchronous time. None of this adds up, and I wonder how Lmsb can legally enforce any of the aforementioned policies. Benjamin Snyder, Bala Kinwood, do you think it would be beneficial to keep elementary schools open instead of high schools, since students of a younger age need more in-person meeting with others? Una Antal, Narberth, this hybrid schedule is poorly constructed for virtual students and in-person students. As a student, I do not appreciate the fact that I have to get up at 7:30 in the morning to stare at a math teacher for hours without a break. Classes and assignments are disorganized because of the lack of clarity and planning. If there's one thing you could provide students and teachers during this unprecedented time, it's consistency and guaranteed safety, and there is neither in this existing schedule. Hi, my name is Victoria Alfred Laveau, Harriton, class of 2016, in Narberth, reiterating Dr. Gilbert's original question. If high school students continue to stay home, why should teachers and staff continue to come in person? Please reconsider opening and mitigate the risk for everyone by going all virtual. Dear board, I'm Maria Wang from Wynwood, a senior at Harriton High School. I don't think you all fully understand why so many high schoolers are upset about opening schools. Yes, students like me get the option to stay home and stay safe from COVID-19, but Lower Merion School District staff do not. I think it's outrageous that you're willing to overlook the lives of my teachers, my bus drivers, lunch ladies, janitors, and countless other adults that have helped me through my life. I know several staff members above the age of 50 who are in high-risk groups who could very likely die if the hybrid model continues. I don't want to end my senior year attending the funerals of my favorite teachers because of negligence from the administration, the very administration that's supposed to care for their employees. I already know several classmates who have contracted COVID, and I personally know teachers as well. Do you really believe that the hybrid model is completely safe? And that's what I got.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brooks. And thank you to everyone who took the time to comment and share your concerns and thoughts. I do want to take a moment and acknowledge the multiple comments from various students regarding the high school hybrid schedule and the hours spent on Zoom. And I want you to know that the administration and the board recognizes that there is a lot of stress and mental health concerns that do need to be discussed and concerned about. And I think that, as with many things in COVID, because nothing is perfect during a pandemic, that there's a lot of balance that needs to come with every decision. And there are a lot of times that are trade-offs. And one of those, as Mr. Hughes talked about earlier today, was that for many students, being in school really provides a connection and some additional help that for students that aren't doing well with virtual. And unfortunately, when we are able to provide that to students in terms of infrastructure, it can be really difficult to do the fully hybrid 9 a.m. start. Although I will put a plug that hopefully in the next few years, we will be able to change the high school start times to later. I also want to comment or point out that the timing talking about mental health is very appropriate. Tomorrow, the Interschool Council, the ISC, holds monthly meetings, sort of hot topics, and tomorrow mornings happens to be on students' well-being and care. It is at 9:30 in the morning via Zoom, and there was information on the ISC Facebook page and in each of the HSA newsletters if you want to join in that and hear some more work that's being done at the district to help with what students need, what the challenges are they facing, and what supports and services the district can provide. So I want to put in a plug for that event. And also, in addition to the monthly morning meetings, the ISC partners with the Student Support Services Department and Mrs. Quinlan to do a series of parent education events in the evenings as well. And those are generally about once a month and hit a variety of topics around student well-being. So I wanted to just make a point of sharing that information if people wanted to learn more. So now I'll pass it back to Mr. Copeland.
Thank you. I just wanted to, reiterate that we really have not. We've been looking at that CHOP metrics that we sent in the letter since the beginning. There have been times, however, that the guidance that we have been getting in various things like sports has changed. And so when that's happened, then we've had to change. Again, we are working as hard as we can to make sure that all of our folks, anybody, students and staff, are safe when they come into school, recognizing that anytime we leave the house, there's some risk. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge that while the attendance at our high schools in particular was significantly down, there were still plenty of students who came. And I really applaud the efforts of the administration for trying to do the best that they could to make it as good an experience as possible. And finally, we're going to continue to look at this, look at the rates, and adjust accordingly as we continue through this, frankly, unparalleled and terrible time.
Okay, thank you. So next on our agenda is the recommended action. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Copeland.
Is it for me or is it? I didn't have that open. Mrs. LaPierre, read the action for me.
The administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approves the revised athletic health and safety plan as presented.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. LaPierre, I do think it's a good idea to do a roll call. So can I pass this back over to you?
Sure, we've done one in the past. Ms. Kalish?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Mooring?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
No.
Ms. Ackman?
Yes.
Ms. Finger?
Yes.
Dr. Gilbert?
Yes.
Ms. Klein?
Yes.
We have 7 in favor and 2 opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. LaPierre. And there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned for tonight. The next regular board business meeting of the board, is on Monday, December 21st at 8 p.m. again via Zoom. Thank you.